Hello everybody! I'm willing to bet that you didn't expect to see a video like this again. I took a small break from Dead Cells. I think like for every game you play, you're bound to get tired of it eventually. I still like Dead Cells. Like I said in one of my previous posts, I do not plan on abandoning the game altogether, but I also want to do something else, like doing video essays, especially the two that was released in the past couple weeks. But I'm also happy to do some of these videos as well. So today I'll be returning back to form, and I'm returning today with a classic. Not exactly a classic, but a weapon that was introduced in the base version of the game. The torch. Just an ordinary torch. Nothing too fancy or spectacular about it. And then after this run, I really came to appreciate just the amount of quality of life improvements they had, especially when it comes to designing weapons. If you go and you try out some of the weapons that are introduced in the later patches or the DLCs, something I found is that they feel smoother to play, if that makes sense. It's not something that you just get, it's something that you really have to try out each individual weapon and then see how they perform. So with the torch, it looks like it's very nimble, it's very fast, you just swing this giant flame around, but there's actually a little bit of pause, like after you attack, which is what's known as the end leg. This leg is not that apparent on the later weapons, but in the weapons, especially in the base version, I'm not sure if they ever updated the animations for these by the way, it's something that you actually get to notice every now and then. So again, it's not something that you just play the game for a couple runs and then you'll realize that. You do have to be trying out a lot of these weapons and then comparing how they perform, and then you can figure out just what the slightly different intricacies of each item. So I really came to appreciate just the amount of effort and the improvement that this game has received over the years. They have clearly shown that they can improve on the game design. So I guess I should talk about a little bit about the torch. Originally, I thought this weapon was pretty good. The only downside was its low attack range, as you can see. It's only got 2 attacks in its combo, and its effect is super simple. It just lights things on fire. That is it. Something I forgot to mention is that there's actually not that many sources in the game that applies flames. And then you're gonna see me stumbling in the Castlevania DLC areas. I definitely like the early game version versus the Dracula version. As now, at least in my runs, I try to default to the Queen and the Sea area just because it's probably a little bit harder and also a bit more interesting. I also want to say that I never made it to the Castlevania DLC areas in my Zero to Hero playthrough. If you were not around for that, it was a series of live streams where I stream myself going from 0 BC into beating the true ending of the game, which takes you, I think, 7 runs if you count the true ending. Luckily, everything went without a hitch. I believe that was a 7-win streak, though I did have some really close calls in there. Now, I say this because in the Zero to Hero playthrough, I didn't go to any of the DLC areas. I went to some of them, but not all of them, especially not the one in the Castlevania one. And the reason is that you have to get some of the runes required to progress. Well, I guess technically you don't need like the spider rune or the wall rune, but it just helps things out like a lot. And to get those, you have to go to the base game biomes. But let me know what other games you guys want me to stream. I was thinking of doing more roguelikes. There's one game that I've been playing recently, it's called Brotato, and it's a roguelike where you pick upgrades and you just shoot things in this arena. It's a very simplistic game, like it's not particularly deep, it's not exactly mechanically demanding like Dead Cells, but it's fun. It's just fun watching numbers go up, and obviously, I'm gonna need to clarify this, I'm not being paid to say this, I've just been having fun with this game. And then a topic for a video essay that I thought of is that I think shallow gameplay or shallow game mechanics in gaming is not exactly a bad thing. Like, I really enjoy Brotato, but the game itself is very simplistic. You just run around when your character auto-attacks nearby enemies, and it's, again, just all about watching numbers go up. The thing about Dead Cells is that it seems very simple, but there is actually a lot of complexity into it, especially when you're trying to like min-max every aspect of damage. And then in Dracula's castle, I'm gonna come across this giant sack of meat, this giant ball of bodies, and then it actually gave me a food item, which I did not know about. So always take a look in your local sack of flesh. There just might be a piece of cheese in there. So yeah, definitely let me know what other games you guys want to see. I've tried playing a little bit of Skull the Hero Slayer. I've also tried playing like a just tiny bit of Cult of the Lamb. I think there's a lot of potential with that one. That one I might actually stream. And then this was very, very unexpected, by the way, because I've actually never seen the Mimic outside the bank yet. But you see just how tough and durable it is. I don't know about this decision to like bring it outside the bank. So how it works is that the Mimic will always appear once in every run. It doesn't even have to be inside the bank. So whenever you buy an item, there's always the chance that one will jump out at you. This can be really, really troublesome, especially if you're in the early game and you don't have an established setup. But it does kind of give you like a new metagame to look at, since you always have to be prepared, right? But eventually I was able to take it down. The attacks are not that complex, but it's just like annoying. I wouldn't say it's hard, it's just annoying. So we're gonna come across death here. I actually quite like that, and then something I didn't know is that if you take too much damage in this fight, well, I guess not damage, but like instances of damage, so he'll have flying orbs around him, and then when he reaches a certain amount, he actually just instantly kills you, which I think is like a lore thing, though I gotta admit that is pretty cool. And this was also when I realized that the build that I was running is not exactly well suited for this fight. You see the turrets just flailing around on the ground, and he's about to do this attack, which I found out that you can actually parry, so that's pretty interesting. But I don't believe you can parry the one where he spins the side, so the one he just fired like across the screen. So this fight is definitely taking a lot longer than I initially realized. He also does quite a lot of damage, as you saw there. There was like once or twice where he flew like into the upper ranges of the screen, where it was literally impossible to damage him unless you like double jumped into the air. He's kind of doing that here, which I find a little bit goofy, like he's just flailing around the place, not exactly attacking. But well, if you want to get roasted alive, that's on you. So death is down, but I did take a lot of damage there. And something I even forgot to mention is that I'm running a death skin. It's one of the ones you get from beating him at a certain amount of times. And then you can actually put the bobby head on the skin, which just looks really goofy and out of place. So yeah, we're reaching the mid-game. We're going into Stilt Village. This might be an interesting choice, but I really didn't want to risk anything after that really rough encounter with death. Stilt Village, it's a very short biome, but that might not exactly be a good thing, as you see with those bombers and everything. But there's no curse chest. The biome itself is very tiny, so you won't take a lot of time before heading into the next biome, and you actually get a food shop, which is nice. So I get to top up on health, and I'm just gonna try to find the key. And something I don't show here is that the torch I'm currently holding is actually still a level 4 torch. Like, I was fighting death with a level 4 torch, the one I got in the very beginning of the game. And this is really bizarre to me because I couldn't find a torch in the castle outskirts, and in Dracula's castle there was actually only one shop, and it was the skills shop. So that's potentially another demerit of having that route, is that you don't get like the prison depth biome, so you don't get another chance to get shops. But in the mid-game you'll really start to feel just how bad your weapons are. Like, it's really gonna start lagging behind in terms of damage. Don't worry, I do think I found one in Stilt Village, so the reason why the damage is really good now is that it's upgraded. So in instances like this, you could call Dead Cells a stat check. I'm doing more damage because I have better stats. That's basically all it is. But once again, just like Brotato, I think that's not exactly a bad thing. Like, people play cookie clickers, for example, right? It's literally, there's no skill involved at all, you just click a cookie. Unless you can somehow argue that as being skillful at the game. But what I really appreciate about Dead Cells, especially in the late game, is that both you and the enemies are essentially glass cannons. Obviously, they probably can take a bit more beating than you, especially like with this elite. I was really impressed, by the way. Like, I did not take a single instance of damage in that encounter. But when I reached the end game, you can see like how much damage enemies deal to you. So just like how you're able to 3-shot enemies, they can also do the same to you. It's not like Binding of Isaac, where you could get like a really, really broken run, and you're so powerful that it's really hard for you to die. But in Dead Cells, you can have like the most broken items, and you can still die pretty quickly. It's really interesting now that I think about it, since only a small percentage of players would have seen the true ending of the game, or at least like witnessed it themselves. Something I found out is that some of the developers can't even beat 5 BC. So it's kind of like in Hollow Knight. I believe there was an interview where they said that they're okay with the players not seeing some of the content that they worked on. Which strikes me as kind of strange, considering that if you make like a game and you make like all this cool content, especially like in 5BC there's the post-Hand of the King stuff. But you have to come to terms that the majority of people will never get to see that. So that is a really interesting design choice, at least to me. I mean, if I were to design a game, I'd probably want players to get the full experience. But hey, the reason why those games are so popular is probably because developers like to think outside the box. So I took a little bit of beating in the Timekeeper fight, but I came out of that pretty well. I did use up a health flask, and then this was the moment where I realized what I have been missing. Phaser. Such a simple skill, but I gotta say, this little skill changed everything about this run. The thing about weapons with low range is that a lot of enemies will just like run away from you. So when you encounter those skeletons in the castle outskirts, they just like back away from you when you try to approach them. So if you have something with low range, then you might have a really rough time trying to catch them. But with the phaser, or I guess the grappling hook as well, this is pretty much made into a joke, especially considering that the amount of damage boost that it gives you. I really hate those anchor guys, by the way. They snipe you from like the other side of the screen, which is crazy. But this is also the point where you can pretty much one-shot every single enemy. And yeah, you see, like, it does a lot of damage. This was probably the point of the run where I wasn't too confident about, especially considering that you have to get up and close in order to deal damage with a torch. The only good thing is that by this point, you can pretty much one-shot every enemy. So I also hate those coral floors. Like, the coral floor mechanic in the shipwreck area, it's pretty annoying. So if like a bomber throws a bomb at it, it actually breaks the platform, but it not only just breaks that, it also, some of the smaller bombs actually fall to the platform below you, so you're not even safe just by being below a coral platform. And then as you saw there, that pirate captain does a lot of damage, like literally all of my health. It still irks me a little bit to this day that there's no lore rooms or any changes made to this biome, but hey, I'm sure there are other priorities. I might just be speaking to a wall here, but I really think those pirate captains should have a bigger lag on the attack animation. Like, as soon as they see you, they're just on you. Like, they're shooting their balls at you, they're whacking their cannons at you. It's just a lot to deal with. So by this point, I was feeling a little bit indifferent about this run, I want to say. Just for like a quick rating, I think the torch is okay. Like, it may seem like it does a lot of damage, but the big compromise, and this is a very big compromise, is that the range is like pretty much non-existent. So I recommend if you are playing this item, then I will run the grappling hook or the phaser. It does help out a lot with like how sticky you are. And I looked for the food item because I knew there was one on the map, I just didn't know where it was. So after this, I think there was still a bit more left on the map, but I'm just like, okay, I'm out of here. I had my fun. I really don't like how much risk I was taking in that biome. It's not like there was anything there for me anyways. So I'm just gonna go and face the end of the game. So the Lighthouse fight. There's quite a lot of nuance here now that I've run through it like a lot of times. I gotta say, the only time when I got a flawless in this entire level was when I did an off-camera vampire killer build. If you're watching my vampire killer video, I was really successful in that run, and then I was wondering if I could actually no-hit this the Lighthouse level with the weapon, and I actually could. It's a very powerful weapon, but with the torch, it's a bit more nuanced, because it doesn't do that much damage like right away, because you gotta fling the torch around and it hits the enemies and it applies burning. If you're going the torch route, then I recommend having some affixes on the weapon, and maybe get some oil sources to activate the burning oil affix. And I know it may have seemed really easy for me to wipe out Calliope there, but things are going to heat up once I get to the other sections. The Lighthouse section, especially the chase, can be very snowbally. I think that's the way I would say it. Because if your weapon does a lot of damage, then you could knock them out, and then you don't have to worry about them like shooting at you or anything like that. Where you can do this approach, is that you just hightail it out of there. You can dodge the attacks if you want, but you don't try and attack back. I think this is probably the best approach I would do if I had a weapon that wasn't that strong. But if you have a weapon, but if you're very confident that you can knock out the servants before getting to the arena, then I would definitely do that instead. The thing is that if you try to whack them with a weak build while you're in the chase, it could potentially lead to you just taking a lot of damage. And the other thing is that if you're running a weaker build and you're being chased, and you were unfortunate enough to get some bad placements on the terrain, or you just get hit, then there's no way to get your health back, just because of how recovery works in this game. Like, it supposedly rewards you to be aggressive, but you can't exactly be aggressive if there's like a rising flame below you and you're being chased from all sides. So after running through the gauntlet like many times, it's just some things I noticed, and I know I didn't do like a boss guide on the servants as well as the queen. I'm not sure you guys will want to see one. So in a second here, I'm gonna climb this ladder, and then the Wrecking Ball servant's gonna hit me. But I can't really recover, because there's no way to do that. They hit you like really long range from off the screen, and then you just have to keep climbing. So that's kind of what I mean by like, that is also a demerit of just running through the tower. Now, luckily, they do give you a little bit of food, though I do think the food placement here is random. But the other demerit is that if you're on 5 BC, the food, I think, of all the times I've run through the lighthouse, it's always contaminated, so you are gonna get some malaise in the fight, which can be actually really bad, considering that the servants do more damage the more malaise you have. So this fight is gonna turn out into a bit of a slog. Normally I like to take out Calliope right away, just because she's always on you with the Wrecking Ball. And the other two are just kind of there, I guess. Yeah, I really thought I could duck behind that for some reason. Like, Cleo's tonfas hurt. They hurt, like, a lot. Luckily with a shield, you can just parry it. She kinda does, like, the Hand of the King triple attack. So you wanna dodge through the first one, jump through the second, and then you dodge through the third. I don't believe, unless you're, like, really far away from her, it's impossible to just try to walk out of range, because you will get hit. At least that's my experience. So I'm currently commentating, but I might actually speed up this part of the footage, just because it's just me, like, waiting for the servants to show up, and with Euterpe, she just hops right out of the way after she, like, stomps on you. And it's not exactly hard, it's just a bit annoying. At least that's what I would say to this part of the fight. It is a stark contrast to the other fights in this game. Even, I guess, the queen, right? Like, the Scarecrow sticks to you like glue. The queen kind of sticks close to you as well. So by this point, it's essentially just a waiting game. Something I found interesting is that if you have a shield, you can parry it, but parrying doesn't just negate all damage, it also deals damage back to the boss. It's like the good old argument between Dark Souls versus Sekiro. Like, in Dark Souls, sure, you can dodge enemy attacks, but in Sekiro, the main mechanic is that you parry the attacks, and it actually does like posture damage back to the enemy, which I thought is pretty cool. It's a different mindset, but it's definitely like up to personal preferences. But anyways, at long last, the servants are down, and then I had a very devilish idea. I'm gonna pick Dead Inside. It doubles my health, but it prevents all forms of healing except for recovery. But in my case, it doesn't matter, because I have no ways to heal anyways. And when I actually get a taste of the double health, I'm really starting to feel like how tanky you feel. Of course, it comes at a pretty drastic drawback, but hey, it's not like I was negatively affected in any way. I mean, that's also something I like about the game, is that it forces you to play to your outs. So if I did have a health flask remaining, then Dead Inside would have been pretty bad, but because of the circumstances that arose, it actually turned to work out pretty well. So there's an attack where the queen grabs you, and then she does a lot of damage with that. But the thing is, Dracula has actually a very similar move, and then, like, it pretty much just one-shots you. I mean, I thought the grab attack from the queen was bad. So another demerit of running a melee weapon in this fight is that when she's slashing at you with the reality slices, there's no way for you to attack back, versus like if you have a ranged build, you could actually fire back and also deal some damage there. So it shaves some time off the fight, which, considering that this is the end of the game, I guess every second counts, right? But this run was definitely a lot closer than I realized, and I do think there were things I could have optimized a bit better, but you know, we got it done. It was a little close, but we got it done. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this good old-fashioned showcase video. It feels good to come back to the game and finally have some more fun with it. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I have a few more surprises that's coming out later this month, so stay tuned for that, enjoy the ending, and have fun with the game.